Shalom, everybody. My name is Dr. Kohn-Tavor. I'm an archaeologist, and sorry I can't be with you at San Antonio as a war forced me to stay here. But I'll try to do the best and to deliver this lecture. The subject is religion, province, economy, the Phoenician lemma, and inter-province relations. I think it's an intriguing discussion which can inflect on both Christianity learnings and on the archaeology. Now, the relations between populations in late antiquity Levant could be examined through various cultural facets. When we come to differentiate between these populations, region and cult are major distinction, both provinces and episcopal sees. I will try to present find from churches in Provincia Phoenicia, which reflects on the socio-economic relations between Christians and Jewish population across Phoenicia on the one side and Provincia Palestina on the other side. The cultural, religious, economical border between Western and Eastern Galilee has been demonstrated before. Christian villages, churches in the west in Provincia Phoenicia, and on the other side, on the east, on Provincia Palestina, synagogues. This divisions follows a border between those provinces for centuries, from Roman and even earlier times, and this has been demonstrated mainly by Aviam before and other scholars. What we are talking about today is mainly about the Byzantine period, beginning in the 4th, 5th century, into the early Islamic period, 8th, 9th century, when the churches, lay churches, ceased to exist. A basilical church. Basilical churches are mostly considered to be rather uniform, with minor regional varieties. But we know that Christianity within itself was very divided. So how can it be that all basilical churches look alike when the differences in religion inside Christianity are major? And let's take a look at the classical basilical church. You can see here the atrium and the nave, and the two aisles. In the center of the church, you have the presbytery or the bema. This is from Gerasa. The presbytery is encircled by a chancel screen, and in the presbytery you have the altar, behind it syntonon and apse and so on. Here you can also see an ambo, and we will talk about it later. The community's wealth invested in the churches make them a primary source of evidence to social and economic relations. The richly decorated mosaics, architecture, furnishing, all housed in a predominant building, actually the most predominant building in the village and even in the city. And you can't, I mean, when you go into a village of the period, one of the main things you see the remains of churches, columns, capitals, and so on. And this definitely says something about the wealth of this community, and hence we can learn about the economy of this community. The recent research that we have conducted on the churches of Provincia Phoenicia, mainly in the southern part of Provincia Phoenicia, in the boundaries of today Israel, was aimed to characterize the regional affinities of the churches in this region, and try to show if there are local changes. Can we differentiate the churches of Phoenicia, of Western Galilee, from churches in other places? Now, the thorough examination that we conducted of some formally excavated churches in the Western Galilee, like Nahariya that we'll see soon, and excavation in new churches like this one in Churbat Erav, you can see here, with a magnificent dedication inscription, was published by Yaakov Ashkenazi and Lea Disegni. And the research shows that there are affinities that you can relate to the churches of Galilee and Phoenicia. Let's look about the architectural features shortly. You can have pedestals that do not show at Palestina, a flight of stairs ascending from the atrium to the narthex. Behind me there, try to move aside a bit. This is a piece of a gallery, which shows that there were galleries. And in the upper picture, you can see that the outside line of the apse is, in some churches, is trapezoid. And we can also take a look at some of the decorative features. Like in the mosaics, one of them is that there is an encircling band around the nave and sometimes around the hall itself. In the apse, the main apse, there is a cornice, and in front of it, and the piece on the right, is a voussoir, which was originally in the front of the arch of the apse. But the main feature was actually quite ununderstood since the beginning of the research. And this is what I will call from here now on the Phoenician Bema. This is, for instance, the church in Nahariya. And you can take a look here in the plan and the picture taken in the excavation in the 1950s. As you can see the apse, the nave, the bema. But if you look in the purple circle, the purple square there, you'd see that there is a second chancel in front of the bema, penetrating into the nave. And you can see in the picture that it was inserted into the mosaic of the nave. Now, this is a feature which was found in very few churches, and few scholars has related to it, but let's take a look on a few other churches. This is, for instance, from Churbat Kenes, excavated by Aviam and Avshalom Gorni, and you can see in front of the bema there are bases of a chancel screen in the nave itself, right in front west of the presbytery of the bema. Here, the marvelous, magnificent church in Kubur Hiram by Tyre, the east of Tyre. This is presented in the Louvre and excavated in the 1860s. And you can see again bases of chancel screen inside the nave, in the level of the nave. Another one, even more northward, this is by Beirut, east of Beirut, Bet Mary. You can see on the east, on the right side of the plan, the apse, the bema, and in front of it a chancel screen. And take a look at the picture on the right. You can see how the bases of a chancel were inserted into the mosaic. Now, this doesn't have to be when you have a regular bema, there is a frame to the bema itself where you can put the chancel screen. Here, because the chancel screen is in the nave, and the mosaic of the nave, they had to put those bases to support the columns of the chancel screen. Here, when we go south to the southern end of Provincia Phoenicia, We have Shikmona by today's Haifa. On the left, a church excavated in the 80s. And again, you can see the posts, both bases of the posts of Chancellor's Green. And on the right, another church, which wasn't preserved at all, but few pieces of mosaic. And here again, the base of Chancellor's Green, which is evident for one of those churches. Take a look at the map. So these are the churches we spoke about. You can see they are all spread along the Provincia Phoenicia. Now, you should take into account this. Most of the research is based on the evidence from Israel and not from Lebanon, basically because in Israel you've got lots of excavation and surveys that you don't have in Lebanon. We were fortunate to have some documentation from the Lebanese side, and you've seen some of it here. But there is another church which gives us a hint about the function of the second chancel, the front chancel within the nave. This is Shavei Tzion in northern Israel. You can see it's on the coast, and here take a look on the plan on the left, you have the apse, the bima, and in front of the bima, there is a second chancel with like a corridor leading into it. And what's very interesting is that this chancel encircles three concentrations of bases of tables. You can see it on the right side. There's a cross, and around the cross, implanted in the mosaic, there are stones which evidently carried legs of a table, a lectern. And I think that the idea draws from this. What and why would we have a lectern within the nave? And evidently, when it is encircled in a chancel screen, it means that it was some kind of limited access for the layman. This was compared, and rightly so, to the Syrian bema. The Syrian bema is known from the 50s and 60s, from the work of Chalenko onwards in northern Syria and the limestone massif. And you can see here in Bechayo another bima, which is in the center of the nave in Syria, in some of the churches, not all of them. And this is like a second bima, which is directed to the east, to the altar. It is totally separated from the bima and the altar. And this also has a lectern in it and a seat. So I think that I drew that term. The Phoenician bema related to Provincia Phoenicia, just like the Syrian bema is from Provincia Syria. Now, there are other tables or lecterns actually in other provincias, like here in Provincia Palestina. This is Churbat Bet Sila. In Samaria, you can see there is an ambo. Now, it is adjoined with the bima, encircled with the same chancel screen. And interestingly enough, this appears in Palestina and in Arabia, but in a very late stage, in the 6th and the 7th century, late 6th and 7th centuries, unlike the Syrian bema, which begins in maybe the late 4th, but definitely early 5th century. And you might know this item. This is, of course, from the Hagia Sophia, and this is an ambo, a pulpit, which was positioned in the center of the Hagia Sophia in Constantinople. And more or less the same idea, a person standing on this and reading out from this. And of course, we all know the pulpits in modern churches, which are usually on one of the sides of the basilica. This is just one example. And here, let's go back to Shavei Tzion. This is a plan of Shavei Tzion. We have also not only the physical evidence, we can relate it to texts. Now, text, religious, liturgical text from Syria are not very common, but the anything related with the liturgy itself, how did it operate, and specifically how does it relate to the architecture of the church, is very, very rare. We are fortunate to have this source, which is Expositio Officiarium, dated to 7th to 9th centuries. But if you take a look at this, this is very interesting. The readers section is on the right side and the left side. The prophets are read on the right side. The apostles and the gospels are read on the left side. Now, it is not very clear, but definitely talking about two different lecterns on which different texts are read from. And this is exactly what we have in Shavei Tzion. You can see in the yellow circles, squares, sorry, those bases of lecterns that we talked about encircled in the second chancel in the Phoenician bema. Now, this is a West Syrian tradition, and if we try to follow the West Syrian tradition till today's church, we can see here, this is Saint Mark in Jerusalem, in the ancient city of Jerusalem, and you can see the purple marks the second chancel, which is in the level of the nave. Behind it, in front of the bema, not on the bema, in front of the bema, there are two lecterns. The monk is standing, is putting his hand on one of those lecterns, on the right and on the left. So this tradition is kept till today in the Syrian Orthodox Church, which is actually originated in West Syria and in Phoenicia. So this linkage between the physical finds and church liturgy is very, very rare in research. I'm not aware, and if someone is, I'll be very happy to learn from you, that a Byzantine period church is related to specific rites. Of course, if they are inscriptions in a specific language, you can relate it to whatever origin it is. But if it is a regular basilica church, it is I don't know of any relations between the rite performed in the church and the architecture. And here we have the chance to say those churches that we find in Phoenicia are related to what we call the West Syrian Orthodox Church. So we can conclude that there are differences in the churches, physical evidence that you can relate to specific rites. The Phoenician bema is an extension of the bema into the nave, encompassing lecterns that bring the reader closer to the layman. This is the same as in the Syrian bema, in Constantinople as well, in Hagia Sophia that we saw, and in Palestina with the ambo. The idea is probably, if you read from these, from the scriptures, so apparently they needed the reader to be closer to the layman so they can hear the reading. And we can see that different solutions were applied for this, for bringing the reader closer to the layman. And it's also in different periods. The Syrian bema is quite early, the Phoenician Bema begins in the apparently 6th century, maybe even late 6th century, and the Yambo in Palestine and Arabia is even later. Now, there's another interesting phenomena that we can trace by this feature. We are looking here at Phoenician churches with Phoenician Bema at Churbat Gilon and Churbat Cheshek. And Gilon is on the left here, and you can definitely see encircled in purple the bases of Phoenician Bema in the nave. And on the right, in Churbat Cheshek, you can see the bases in the chancel. This is the right side, this is on the south side, and there's also one on the north side. This specific church in Churbat Cheshek is dated 519 CE. Now, these churches are not in Provincia Phoenicia. They are across the border in Palestine. And this is only in a specific region, which is called the Tephen in the Western Galilee, that we find this phenomena of churches with a Phoenician Bema within the boundaries of Palestina Secunda to be precise. Now, in Cheshek also, we have a dedication inscription with a date, 519, but the era is according to Palestina Secunda. And this is very interesting because you know that the church hierarchy, the episcopal see, is related to Provincia, the civil side of the hierarchy. And here, the see, those churches apparently use the episcopal see and the tradition of Tyre, Phoenicia, inside the boundaries of Palestina and using the date, the era of Palestina. You can see here on the map, this is the Tephen region in yellow, and those churches, Churbat Cheshek and Churbat Gilon that we talked about, across the border from Phoenicia into Palestina. So we assume that this region, Tephen region, was apparently not inhabited by the Jews in the early Byzantine period, around the 5th, 6th century. And it was settled by Christians coming from Phoenicia across the border and building their churches in their tradition. Inside the Jewish spheres of Palestina's Galilee. So let's conclude here. We can see that diligent research has the capability of discern and establish connections between ancient churches and particular religious rituals, like the West Syrian Phoenician Bema churches. And the Phoenician Bema represent a liturgical practice from West Syria used for the ceremonial reading of the scriptures. The boundary encompassing cultural, religious, and economic aspects can be transcendent with dual hierarchy, cultural and religious subordination to the Provincia Phoenicia, while maintaining the civilian order aligned with Palestina. And I think that is a crucial point in the economy and in the cultural and sociological relations in the Byzantine society. So thank you for listening, and I would like to thank also our chair leader, Professor Choi. I would like to thank Moti Aviam and Yaki Ashkenazi in which I did the research, and of course the organizers of this convention of SPL. And I would encourage you, if you'd like to inquire, learn more, respond, anything, because we are not face-to-face, please contact me at this email that you have here, dagesh@ta@gmail.com, and I'd ask the chairperson also to hand it out to whoever is interested. And thank you again, and have a great convention.